skills that really are more adversarial than interest-based. So it's how do you build a capacity to retrain some of your staffs and leaders and people in a new way of doing things, and that's going to take some patience, but it's going to take your unified commitment to model, which I think you're doing, and also build a capacity to help people with skills that they haven't necessarily learned heretofore.
Okay, good. You've heard the phrase, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So I'm going to ask you now, you have the leaders of the Massachusetts Education Partnership in this room. What is it that you need? What is it that you want to have happen here in the state that we can provide? And just to summarize what the services and the activities, clearly there's the District Capacity Project, which is a deep dive on a set of issues that come from the district that say, districts that say, here's the set of problems we want to work on to drive student achievement, and we need help in developing the relationships, the processes, coaching, and the leadership in order to do so. And we're willing to work intensively with a number of districts. Secondly, we have the Interest-Based Bargaining Institute, where we welcome requests for training and facilitation on on either the negotiation of a new contract or a particular problem, whether it's the teacher evaluation system or some other issue that you want to try this process and you want to see if it can be put to work. We're willing to work with you and provide that kind of training and facilitation, and we've got skilled people ready to do that at no charge. We also are putting in place and now have up and running a very good website with lots of resources, and we want to turn that into a peer learning network so that you can learn from each other and share ideas and experiences and frustrations and successes and failures and questions of each other around the state, so that you help each other, both by building a knowledge base, but also building personal relationships where you can go and talk with someone either via the modern technology or the old-fashioned technology of visiting with each other to share experiences. So those are the kinds of things that we thought would help move this process forward, to focus on student achievement, not just clearly to improve the collective bargaining relationships, but not just for improving the relationships on their own. It's to drive real results. So, what can we do? What services, what activities, what questions do you have for this emerging operation? There's a question over here. I think that's Tim, right?
Yep.
We heard from Tim.
You asked for it.
Hey, with a hat like that, you know, you could say almost anything before we shoot it off.
We've got the leadership of many of the constituencies. However, the parents aren't represented up there, which I think it is one of our toughest challenges. But really, from my perspective, from the federal government and from the state government, well-meaning people are asking us to do things that could make a difference, but their timelines are ridiculous. Implementing this massive change in the Common Core curriculum and our new evaluation instrument in the time frame that you're giving us, and retail, three massive things that everybody sitting at these tables who are working and living in school districts or school buildings understand that you can't do this with fidelity without the time to have the collaboration and the conversation and the inclusive process with our constituencies. And it's just not there. Massachusetts is number one. We're number one because we're doing some things right. And we like to do these things right. And we need, every one of us needs to be advocates with reps and senators, and you need to be our voice saying, give us the time to do this right.
All of us request a little more time to do all the things that people are being asked to do. Yes.
also one of those elephants in the room, and I think that this is an area where you'll all agree. What about early childhood education? What about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full-day kindergarten, for heaven's sakes? So we'll put that out there.
Anytime someone wants to respond and answer these questions.
Absolutely. You know, the MTA certainly supports that. I'd love to see, you know, free public kindergarten, all-day kindergarten in every district. You know, Joe can speak for the feds, but I do believe that there is an effort to send more money to early education, and I will just speak for myself. If President Obama wants to give every last dime to having early ed and free kindergarten as a target of ending achievement gaps, I think that's where we really need to start, not having achievement gaps coming into the schools to begin with.
Tim Sullivan mentioned a little bit earlier about needing the time, and my immediate response was how sweet the sound of one's own voice coming from a distant source. That's a constant theme with us. Someone mentioned earlier this morning about 75% of state and federal activity in the area of public education involves enforcement and compliance. Maybe a good idea would be to take some of the money spent on enforcement and compliance and focus it more carefully on putting social workers in school, building the networks of community-based social and medical services for kids, and expanding early childhood services, not only for kids at risk, but for everybody. I think we're wasting an inordinate amount of time. And when I think about the notion that, with all due respect to everybody, that well-meaning people in Washington and Malden and others are trying to do the right thing, I think of what Sarah Vowell wrote in a book about one of her recent books talking about the Pilgrims, where she said, taking away the ability of a Massachusetts bureaucrat to regulate and punish is like taking an ice cream cone out of a child's hand. When we talk about changing culture, I think that is an important culture that we need to change. And a lot of the money spent on bureaucracy might be very well redirected towards direct services to children in schools and classrooms.
I'd like to pick up on a point that Tim made. He said, our students are doing very well, so we must be doing something right. I'm sure, as most of you know, on the National Assessment of Educational Progress, our students are #1 in the nation. And on the TIMS, the International Math and Science Test, we're #1 in the Western world.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned with.
You know, we really don't know why we're #1. We've never done a serious study to determine why we're #1. I know what some of the answers are. Obviously, the quality of teaching is part of it, but not the whole part of it. So we've never done a serious study. I mean, think about that for a minute. #1 in the nation, #1 in the Western world. So, someone said something about peer learning and student achievement. This is a perfect example of that, where we can put some real emphasis on it. Because so many wonderful things are happening in the classroom, but we haven't done a study of that to share all of that throughout the state.
Okay, good. Can I just vote, because I just can't not bring another perspective to this conversation. You know, when I sit around with superintendents, the list is endless in terms of what our needs are. And I do not rebut one word about need for early childhood, which we strongly support, or the need for some infrastructure in terms of how we support families, and the longer school day. I mean, we can go on and on and on. But the urgency remains that we still have large numbers of kids who are not getting an adequate education. So we have two challenges to me. One, which I think we all here
because I think it was voiced earlier, that we need to be a voice. We need to be a voice as organizations. That means everybody here has to be that voice, because it's not going to come just from Paul Toner or Tom Gosnell or Glenn Kuchar or me. It's going to come from us. And we need to find commonality, common ground, where we come together with strategy about how we prioritize what we need and demand it for the best of what we offer. So that is something that I think we all accept the challenge and we will continue to work on. But that does not negate what is an agenda that is, for most part, I think, an appropriate agenda. What we need to figure out is the timing and the timeline and what we can reasonably do. And trust me, we spend a lot of time with the department talking about how to look at these as not 1 or 2 year development issues, but long term. And we will continue to be that voice. But one of the things that's important to recognize is that we do have to think about how we collectively, this goes right back to the whole notion about our organizations on a statewide level, our organizations at the local level, and how we collectively work together around those issues.
I just want to chime in on something Tom said. I've heard Secretary Duncan speak personally several times, especially in the last few months, and I've heard Joe say it a number of times, and I've read it a number of times. I mean, Secretary Duncan, whatever he might have said at the beginning, his theme now is this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm very glad he's saying that, because I think he acknowledges the good work that's going on here in Massachusetts and other places, and is saying, we want to get it right. And I've heard Tom Scott at multiple meetings talk about, rolling out these new evaluation systems and other things that we're working on is really a 3 to 5 year project. It's not great if you got your contract language negotiated. Great if you're starting the conversation about district-based measures, but now it's still, the hard work is about us actually doing it together and doing it well and doing it in a way that's respectful of everybody. And I'm, I respect the Commissioner's comments. I don't want us to be all about happy talk, but there's a lot of good things going on in the state, and working together we can make more of those things happen. One last comment, Dr. Susan Moore Johnson's here, and I greatly appreciate her being here. She's been a wonderful ally at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Has kept the union's voice in the room, invites several of us every year to talk to her students. But one of her colleagues, Dr. Richard Elmore, at a Rennie Center event 10 years ago, put it pretty starkly. He said, union school committee superintendent, you guys can keep having your squabbles, but the public in general really doesn't care about what you argue about behind closed doors at the district office. All they want to know is that their child, their son or daughter, is getting a good, solid, quality public education. And if they're not getting a good, solid, quality public education, they're going somewhere else. And if you don't know it, I'll just let you know right now. There will probably be legislation filed to look at caps on charter schools in Massachusetts. And if we and you can't work together to find solutions to improve, where we're lagging, and some of you are doing wonderful, and some of us, despite all of your best efforts, are still having challenges. We have to find the solutions internally, because if not, there is a danger that others will come in and say, enough's enough, we're going to lift the cap on charter schools, and we're going to let somebody else fix your problem.
Okay, so that's the challenge back to everybody in this room, both the people at the front of the room and the people all across this great ballroom. We have to work together. We have a challenge. We've been challenged by other states, other approaches, the view that we have to destroy the system to recreate it anew. And so we have to put these tools to work to see if we can't generate the kind of rate of improvement fast enough to demonstrate the power of this approach. So this afternoon, we'll start at 1:30 with our breakout groups again.